Footage used in deep cuts is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Deep Cuts makes no claim of ownership and simply uses the footage for purposes of education, commentary, and criticism under fair use. Please support filmmakers and the art of filmmaking by watching this film in its entirety on home media or streaming services where available.
Hello and welcome to Deep Cuts, the show dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the gory in all your favorite horror movies. I'm your host, Matthew Bolton, and today we're exploring George A. Romero's flesh-eating masterpiece, Night of the Living Dead. Even though there were zombie films before Night of the Living Dead, like White Zombie, King of the Zombies, and Plague of the Zombies, Romero's Night of the Living Dead brought the genre to the mainstream and away from the mind-controlled zombies that came before. I can't even begin to explain or scratch the surface of how much of a cultural impact that this film has made in the decades since its release. Starting production with only a $6,000 budget, Night of the Living Dead began filming just north of Pittsburgh with a surprisingly small cast and crew. A cast and crew that wore so many hats that most of the actors in this film were also producers, and throughout filming they probably couldn't keep track of them all. Somehow they managed to finish the film after raising an additional $108,000 in funding. And to save money, George not only directed, but co-wrote the story, was the film's director of photography, and the film's editor. It's also worth mentioning that the film that jump-started decades of zombie films, TV series, books, comics, and video games never once called their creatures zombies in the movie. In fact, they referred to their zombies during production as ghouls. With all that being said, let's desaturate this image a bit. That's much better. Better get on with the movie, because they're coming to get you, Barbara. The movie begins with Johnny and Barbara arriving at the cemetery after a long drive from Pittsburgh to deliver a wreath on a family grave. Johnny is tired of making the trip, but Barbara gives him the classic little pep talk.
Mother wants to remember, so we trot 200 miles into the country and she stays at home.
Well, we're here, John, all right?
Johnny hears the radio try to come back to life with some type of news broadcast trying to come through before he hops out of the car just to catch up with Barbara in the cemetery. He tells Barbara that the radio wasn't broken like they had thought on their drive up, and Barbara just wants to find the grave and get this over with. They find the tombstone after some more sibling bickering and place the new wreath, and Johnny gives Barbara a moment to sit with the headstone. But like literally a moment before he lays this shit line on her while she's trying to pay her respects.
Hey, come on, Barb. Church was this morning, huh?
Moments later, a storm starts rolling in with bright flashes of lightning, and Johnny notices the first zombie of the movie, played by Bill Heisman, who would go on to make appearances in a few of Romero's films. After he notices the man walking through the cemetery, Johnny gives Barbara some more brotherly love.
Hey, I mean, praying's for church, huh? Come on.
Johnny then tries to calm the situation by reminding Barbara of how he used to scare the shit out of her when they were kids. He even decides to start teasing her with one of the most famous horror lines in history.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Stop it! You're ignorant.
They're coming for you, Barbara.
Johnny sees the cemetery zombie and teases Barbara that he is one of the people out to get her, and then he runs away, leaving her alone. Only Johnny was right, and the zombie grabs Barbara. She screams for Johnny, who is able to pull the zombie off of her, and wrestles with him a bit before Johnny is tripped and falls, hitting his head on a tombstone, killing him. It's a tough break, kid. The cemetery zombie decides he's not finished killing and puts Johnny on ice before going after Barbara. Barbara makes it back to the car and locks herself in, but Johnny has the keys, so she's not going anywhere. The zombie then tries to break in and eventually does after using a nearby stone or brick to break the car's window, which is something we don't see zombies do very often. In a last-ditch effort to evade the zombie, Barbara releases the car's brake and gets the car rolling the hell out of there and down a hill. It seems like Barbara will be safe, at least until she hits a tree like 100 feet down the road. I promised myself I wouldn't get annoyed by Barbara in this movie, but she does so many things to get herself killed in this movie! She ditches the car and makes a run for it, escaping the zombie and running through some woods until she comes across a farmhouse at the other side of a field. Unfortunately for Barbara, when she reaches the house, the door is locked. She runs around to the front where she sees the cemetery zombie approaching and narrowly escapes into the house, locking the zombie outside. Barbara searches around and eventually finds the kitchen, where she arms herself with a large knife. She catches her bearings and notices that a struggle must have occurred in the house, and cautiously starts to look around. She tries the phone, but there's nothing on the line. Outside a nearby window, Barbara can see the cemetery zombie, and he's brought some friends to the house party. While exploring more of the house, Barbra comes across a dead body at the top of the stairs, and she snaps before making a run for it towards the front door. When she gets outside of the house, she's blinded by the headlights of a truck. It's Ben, and he quickly moves Barbra back inside, who is now hysterical and in a state of shock. She's also unable to talk as Ben tries to understand what the hell's going on. He suggests they get the hell out of there as Barbra stays back by the stairs. Some blood drips down onto her hand from the body above, and Barbra goes to join Ben in the kitchen. Ben is packing up the food in the kitchen when Barbra joins him and asks him,
What's happening?
Ben takes a look outside and sees 2 zombies out by his truck. He asks Barbra if she's seen any other ghouls walking around. Meanwhile, she's having a freak out. Ben runs outside and sees a zombie breaking his headlight and uses the distraction to tire iron the other zombie in the face a few times. When that zombie's friend tries to jump into the fight, Ben says, "Taste my tire iron," and takes him out. While Ben is outside dealing with the 2 undead, Barbra is almost attacked by a zombie who managed to make its way inside. Ben gets Barbra out of there just in the nick of time and tussles with the zombie, but loses the tire iron in the process. The tussle moves to the ground, and Ben is able to grab the tire iron and spike the ghoul in the forehead. Ben gets up and is in shock at what just happened, and what he had to do, and pauses for a moment. That is until he sees another zombie making its way inside. Without hesitation, Ben spikes the zombie in the face, who backs up, revealing more zombies rolling in, and Ben quickly shuts and locks the door. In the other room, Barbra stares at the dead zombie on the floor, and weirdly its eyes move. Ben breaks her out of her trance, and he removes the body from the room, dragging it outside the house, and then lighting it on fire in the front yard in front of the other ghouls, as if to send a message to them. Once back inside, Ben begins gathering materials and starts telling Barbra what they need to do to secure the house. Barb can't barely move or speak due to shock, and Ben almost loses his cool.
God damn!
This is a great example of the acting chops that Dwayne Jones brought to the film. Ben convinces Barbra to help, and she goes off to find some supplies, or whatever this is. Ben and Barbra board up the windows, and Ben describes how he got the truck and how he got to the house, describing a scene of horror that he passed. This is another scene where Dwayne Jones shines. With his descriptions of the creatures and the gas station fire, you can imagine everything through his acting. It's absolutely brilliant. Barbra begins to tell her story, and Ben continues boarding up the windows and gathering supplies. He knows that Barbra is hysterical. She keeps going on with her story, and she begins to crack, begging Ben to help her find Johnny. Ben tells her that Johnny is dead when she tries to escape the house, and she slaps him. Ben gives her a solid right hook to the face, and she passes out. Ben catches her before she hits the ground and puts her down on the couch to sleep it off while he finishes securing the house. Later, Ben tries the radio and catches a broadcast explaining the situation. The broadcast explains what the scene is like outside and in the city, and the world is in chaos. Ben soaks a chair in lighter fluid and pushes it outside, lighting it on fire. This scares off the zombies for now, and he gets back inside to secure the door. Ben continues searching and securing the house while the radio broadcast continues. He finds a rifle in the closet and upgrades his weapon. Ben is upstairs making sure everything is safe, and Barbra sits up to see somebody coming in from behind a door within the house. She is startled when Harry Cooper and Tom come flying into the room like a couple of bats out of hell. Ben calms the situation, but also asks them what the hell they were doing downstairs while he was upstairs fighting off all the zombies. Cooper shows that he is somebody who doesn't listen to anyone else, and explains that he was keeping him and his people safe, and that those creatures wipe them all out if they decide to stay upstairs. Tom explains that they have no way out if they stay in the cellar. Once all the men are able to settle, they take a look outside, and there are more creatures outside than before. They then begin to argue about the safest and most secure place to hold up again, before Ben lays the smackdown on Cooper.
Well, listen, I got a kid down there. She can't possibly, I couldn't bring her up here. She can't possibly take all the racket and those things smashing through the windows.
Well, you're her father. If you're stupid enough to go die in that trap, that's your business. However, I am not stupid enough to follow you. It is tough for the kid that her old man is so stupid. Now, you get the hell down in the cellar. You can be the boss down there. I'm boss up here.
Ooh, sick burn.
Tom then brings his girlfriend Judy upstairs before Cooper runs back downstairs, locking the door behind him. He goes downstairs to tell his wife what's going on, and they argue over the fact that they should likely go upstairs to survive. Cooper gets agitated because, again, He must always be right.
That's important, isn't it?
What?
To be right, everybody else to be wrong.
Their daughter is sickly and unable to move. Helen tells Harry that they can't die down there, and hears Tom call out that they found a TV upstairs. Helen decides she wants to go up and see what's happening on the newly discovered TV, so the Coopers send Judy down to watch their daughter as they go upstairs to check out the situation. Helen sits and smokes with Barbra before Cooper comes up and stirs everything up. Ben shuts him up so they can watch the broadcast. It describes that the dead are coming back to life and seeking human victims. It also goes on to speculate that a satellite that was returning from Venus may have some radiation that could have caused this. This is actually a nod to the original idea for the movie, which was more of an alien invasion angle. We then see a group of reporters that are pressing government officials about answers on the situation, including one very handsome young George A. Romero. Ben then makes a plan to go to the gas pumps to refuel his truck so that they can all get to a shelter that's listed on the news. Then another report comes on with a Dr. Grimes. The report tells them that they should seek medical attention for anyone who has been injured by one of the creatures. Helen goes downstairs to sit with her daughter and sends Judy back up. Ben, Cooper, and Tom all devise a plan, and Tom returns with some fruit jars from the cellar and a key labeled for the gas pump out back.
I found some fruit jars in the cellar, and there's a key on here that's labeled for the gas pump out back.
Judy and Tom make Molotov cocktails and talk about their families, and Tom reassures her that they're doing the right thing. Ben, Cooper, and Tom prepare to go through with their plan, and Cooper starts chucking Molotovs down at the creature. Ben and Tom make their way out to the truck, fighting off zombies as they go. Judy stupidly runs out of the house last minute to join Tom and Ben at the truck. Although it looks great in the movie, Ben takes his damn time getting onto the truck, and eventually the three get the hell out of there and make their way to the gas pumps. At the pump, Ben has to shoot the lock off to get the pump working, and Tom stupidly soaks the truck with gasoline as Ben's torch lights everything up, feeling that getting in the truck and driving away from the pump was the best option, and he and Judy leave Ben behind. And I think we all know where this one's going. Cooper can see the explosion from the house, and Ben has to fight his way through the zombie horde to get back. These are easily some of the coolest shots in the entire film. When Ben makes it back to the door, Cooper had already sealed it shut and had no intention of letting Ben back in. Ben has to break his way in, and Cooper reluctantly helps him seal the door before he gets a few of those famous Ben right hooks. Checking back in with Tom and Judy at the local barbecue, we see our zombies are ready to feast down for the first time in the movie. Everyone regroups and they try to figure out what they can do to escape. Ben tries to keep hope alive and everybody keeps shutting him down. Barbra keeps talking about how Johnny has the keys, and they all finally listen to her after thinking she's been crazy for the last however long. And another new broadcast begins, talking about small militias that are cruising around and killing off the ghouls. This is where we find out how to kill the ghouls, with a gunshot to the head or by destroying the brain. They cut to Chief of Police McClellan, who is super cool with the entire situation at hand.
Chief, if I were surrounded by 6 or 8 of these things, would I stand a chance with them?
Well, there's no problem. If you had a gun, shoot him in the head. That's a sure way to kill him. If you don't, get yourself a club or a torch. Beat him or burn him. They go up pretty easy.
Well, Chief McClellan, how long do you think it will take you until you get the situation under control?
Well, that's pretty hard to say. We don't know how many of them there are. We know when we find them, we can kill them.
Are they slow-moving, Chief?
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
Just then, the power goes out. Ben walks down to the cellar to look for a fuse box. Cooper tries to tell Helen that he's gonna go for the gun, and the ghouls all start pounding on the house to get in. Everyone tries to cover the windows and doors, and of course, Cooper stands there letting everyone do the work for him, before he takes Ben's gun, drawing it on Ben. Ben fights him off, and then eventually gets control of the gun. He then shoots Cooper in the stomach as the creatures start breaking in and grabbing at everyone, and Cooper stumbles down into the cellar to get one last look at his daughter before he dies. Back upstairs, Barbra watches as Helen is holding the creatures back. She eventually breaks her hysteria and runs to help. Helen gets free and runs downstairs to see Karen and to check on Harry. Downstairs, Karen is having a late night snack on Harry's arm, and Helen can't comprehend it all as Karen approaches and stabs her to death with a masonry trowel. This was terrifying to most audiences watching this, and even the sound choices were weird. Back upstairs, Ben and Barbara lose control of the zombie horde, and the zombies begin to break in, starting with zombie Johnny. And Johnny grabs Barbara, and Ben can't save her. Now completely surrounded, Ben makes his way down into the cellar, but not before Karen takes a shot at him. He's able to toss her away and get into the cellar as the horde enters the house and roughs everything up like an 80s teen house party. Ben secures the door and finds Cooper dead on the ground, except he's not dead. Ben happily unloads a few rounds into him and puts him down for good, then takes Helen out before making his final stand at the base of the stairs. Later that morning, the chief and his militia approach the farmhouse and kill the zombies along the way. This sound wakes Ben up in the cellar, who starts to make his way out. As Ben makes his way out of the cellar to greet the militia, in the heat of the hunt, the police mistake Ben for one of the ghouls, shooting and killing him. The film finishes with a grueling photo montage that shows what happens next, bringing Ben's body out, dragging it onto a fire pit, and lighting it on fire.
Okay, he's dead. Let's go get him. That's another one for the fire.
And there you have it, 1968's Night of the Living Dead. George Romero would go on to make 5 sequels to Night of the Living Dead, and his son is currently developing a prequel to this film called Rise of the Living Dead. This film was groundbreaking in many ways, including having the film's lead, Ben, played by actor Dwayne Jones. It was a different time back then, and having a black protagonist was something that most films had never done before. Unfortunately for the filmmakers, the original theatrical distributor, the Walter Reed organization, forgot to print the copyright indication on the final film, making it public domain. If you or anyone you know wants to be a filmmaker and wants to know what it really takes to make a feature film, watch the documentary that I've linked below. It's a great look at how they made the film. Join me next time as I explore another one of your favorite scary movies. Until then, I'm Matthew Bolton, and this has been Deep Cuts. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Deep Cuts. Let me know in the comments below what you think of Night of the Living Dead, and if you'd like me to cover more of George A. Romero's films in future episodes. Until then, stay screaming.